The great council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive station that orbited the neutral world of Concord Prime. Inside, representatives from 847 different species gathered for their monthly meeting. The chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in circular tiers that rose up like the inside of a great bowl. Holographic displays flickered in the air, translating thousands of languages simultaneously. Ambassador Velthara of the Corvani adjusted her feathered crest and looked around the chamber. Something felt wrong. It took her a moment to realize what it was. The human section was empty. For 200 years, ever since humanity had joined the Galactic Council, their delegation had been the loudest voice in every debate. Humans talked constantly. They proposed new treaties every month. They mediated disputes between species who had been enemies for centuries. They inserted themselves into every discussion, every negotiation, every problem. Some species found it annoying. Others found it helpful. But everyone had gotten used to it. The empty seats looked strange, wrong, like missing teeth in a smile. "Has anyone heard from the human delegation?" Velthara asked the Palaxian representative sitting next to her. The Palaxian, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish filled with blue light, pulsed uncertainly. "No contact. All their communication channels are closed. We assumed they were simply running late. But the humans were never late. In fact, they usually arrived early." Council Director Zephrim called the meeting to order. He was from an avian species, tall and elegant, with golden feathers and sharp eyes that could see across great distances. He had been director for 50 years and prided himself on maintaining order and tradition. "We begin today's session with..." He paused, looking at the empty human section. "Does anyone know the whereabouts of the human delegation?" Silence. 847 species and not one had an answer. "Very well," Zephrim continued, though his feathers ruffled with unease. "We shall proceed. First order of business." "Director!" a voice called out from the upper tiers. It was War Master Krell of the Thranix Empire. He was massive, even by Thranix standards, with thick scales that gleamed like dark metal and eyes that burned with orange fire. "Before we proceed, I wish to address the continued absence of the Thranix delegates who were summoned regarding the incident 3 months ago." Velthara's stomach tightened. The incident. Everyone knew what he meant, even though few wanted to talk about it. 3 months ago, a human colony ship called the Bright Tomorrow had been traveling through what humans considered neutral space. The ship carried 15,000 civilians, families, children, elderly people, all heading to a new world to start fresh lives. The Thranix Empire had claimed that the ship violated their territorial boundaries, even though the boundaries had never been formally recognized by the Council. Thranix warships had fired on the colony ship without warning. The Bright Tomorrow had been destroyed completely. All 15,000 humans died. Humanity had been furious. Their ambassador, a stern woman named Chen, had demanded an emergency council session. She presented evidence, testimony, and data logs. She asked for justice. She asked for the Thranix officers responsible to be held accountable. She asked the council to enforce the laws that supposedly governed all species equally. The council had debated for 2 weeks. The Thranix Empire was powerful. They had the largest military fleet in known space. They controlled important trade routes. Many council members depended on Thranix protection or trade agreements. In the end, the council had ruled the incident regrettable but justified. The Thranix would pay a small fine for the misunderstanding. No officers would be punished. No territory would be returned to neutral status. Velthara remembered that day clearly. Ambassador Chen had stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the council's decision, and she had not shouted. She had not argued. She had simply looked around at all of them with an expression that Velthara still saw in her nightmares. It was not anger. It was something colder, something final. "We understand perfectly," Chen had said. Then she had walked out. Every human delegate had followed her. They had not returned. "The Thranix delegates are not required to attend," Zephrim said carefully. "The matter has been resolved according to council law." "Exactly," Krell's voice boomed across the chamber. The matter is closed. Yet the humans sulk like children denied a toy. Their absence is disrespectful to this council. A few species murmured agreement, but many more stayed silent. Velthara noticed that the smaller species, the ones who depended on council protection, looked nervous. The meeting continued, but Velthara could not focus. Her mind kept returning to the empty seats. Humanity had been angry before. There had been other disputes, other disagreements, but they had always come back. They had always kept talking, kept negotiating, kept trying to find diplomatic solutions. This silence was different. After the meeting ended, Velthara returned to her private quarters on the station. She accessed her personal communication system and tried to contact the human embassy. The system connected, but instead of a person, an automated message played. The human diplomatic corps is currently unavailable. We thank you for your patience. She tried again. Same message. She tried contacting human trade stations, human border outposts, even human scientific expeditions. Every single channel gave the same automated response. It was as if humanity had simply unplugged themselves from the galactic community overnight. Velthara had a friend, a scholar named Kelvin from the amphibious Aquarii species. Kelvin had spent decades studying human culture and history. If anyone could explain what was happening, it would be him. She found him in his research quarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing human historical documents. His large eyes looked tired, and his usually bright blue skin had faded to a worried gray. "Kelvin," she said, "what is happening with the humans?" He did not look away from his displays. "They have stopped talking." "Yes, I noticed, but why? Surely they will come back once they have cooled down." Now Kelvin did look at her, and his expression made her step back. "Velthara, do you know what humans do when they stop talking?" No? Neither did I, not really. I have been studying their history non-stop for 3 months ever since they left the council. I have been looking at their wars, their conflicts, their patterns of behavior. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. When humans stop talking, Velthara, it is not because they have given up. It is because they have decided that talking is finished. I do not understand. Kelvin gestured to his displays. Look, this is from Earth's history, from their old nations. Before humans reached the stars, they were divided into hundreds of separate groups. These groups fought constantly. But there were rules, you see. Ambassadors, negotiations, treaties. Even enemies would talk to each other. He pulled up another document. But there were times when one nation would recall all their ambassadors from another nation. Close all diplomatic channels. Stop all communication. Do you know what that meant? Velthara shook her head. It meant war was coming. Not just a small conflict. Totava. When humans stopped talking, it meant they had decided that words were useless. It meant they were going to act instead. But the humans have always been peaceful, Velthara protested. Yes, they argue and debate constantly, but they have never started a war. They have been the most diplomatic species in the entire council. Exactly, Kelvin said, and his eyes were haunted. They have been diplomatic. They have talked and talked and talked for 200 years. But have you asked yourself why? Why would a species be so insistent on talking, on negotiating, on finding peaceful solutions? Because they value peace? Or because they fear what happens when they stop? Kelvin pulled up more documents. Humans spent 10,000 years on their homeworld perfecting the art of killing each other. They have had more wars than most species have had generations. They have invented hundreds of ways to destroy their enemies. They studied war like we study science. Their greatest military leaders are remembered like artists and philosophers. Velthara felt cold, but they chose to leave that behind. When they joined the galactic community, did they? Or did they simply restrain themselves? Kelvin pulled up a display showing the human military. Look at their fleet. By council standards, it is small. They have only a few hundred warships compared to thousands for the Thranics. But have you noticed that human ships are never where they say they will be during inspection? What do you mean? I mean that for the past 70 years, every time the council has conducted fleet inspections, humans report their ship positions and allow inspectors aboard. But I have been analyzing the data. The ships that get inspected are always the same ones. and there are long gaps in the patrol schedules that do not make sense. Weeks where dozens of ships are listed as in maintenance all at once. You think they have been hiding their true fleet size? I do not know, but I am afraid to find out. Kelvin closed his displays. I have requested an emergency council session to present my findings. I have been denied. Denied? Why? Because Krell and the Thranix representatives convinced the council that I am being alarmist, that the human silence is just a tantrum that will pass. Kelvin's skin flickered with agitation. They do not understand. The humans are not sulking. They are preparing. That night, Velthara could not sleep. She kept thinking about Kelvin's words. She kept seeing those empty seats in the council chamber. At midnight station time, every alarm in Concord Prime began to scream. Velthara rushed to her communication console. Emergency broadcasts were coming from every direction. She pulled up the main channel and froze. A human communication beacon had reactivated. These beacons had been placed throughout the galaxy over the past 2 centuries, creating a network that allowed for faster communication across vast distances. They had been built and maintained by humanity as a gift to the galactic community. For 3 months they had been dark, silent. Now one had turned back on, but it was not broadcasting messages or data. It was broadcasting coordinates and a countdown. 47 days. Velthara stared at the display. The coordinates pointed to a location in Thranix space, and the countdown was ticking down. 47 days, 3 hours, 17 minutes. What would happen when it reached 0? Within an hour, the entire galaxy was awake and asking the same question. Analysts tried to determine what the coordinates meant. They pointed to empty space near a Thranix military outpost, but there was nothing there. No planets, no stations, nothing. Zephyrim called an emergency meeting. The council chamber filled with frightened delegates demanding answers. Even Krell looked less confident than usual, though he tried to hide it behind bluster. This is clearly a threat, he announced. The humans are attempting to intimidate us. We should not give in to their theatrics. But Velthara noticed that many species were not listening to Krell. They were watching the countdown which now displayed in the chamber's central hologram. 46 days, 23 hours, 14 minutes. We should try to contact them, suggested a delegate from the Palaxian Collective. Open a dialogue. Find out what they want. We have tried, Zephyrim said wearily. Every channel returns the same automated message. The humans are not accepting communication. Then send a ship to human space. Demand they speak to us, and we have. 3 delegations have been sent in the past 3 months. All were met at the border by human patrol ships and turned away. The humans said only, there is nothing to discuss. Return home. The chamber fell silent except for the soft ticking of the countdown. Velthara found Kelvin again after the meeting. He was in his quarters staring at the countdown display. 46 days, she said. What do you think it means? I think, Kelvin said slowly, that it means the humans are giving us time. Time for what? To prepare, to evacuate, to say goodbye. He looked at her with his large, sad eyes. When humans went to war with each other on their homeworld, there were sometimes patterns, declarations, warnings, not because they wanted to give their enemies an advantage, but because they wanted their enemies to know that what was coming was not random. It was not cruel. It was justice. Justice for the bright tomorrow. 15,000 dead, and the council said it was justified. Kelvin's voice was flat. The humans have decided to show us what justice looks like when you cannot negotiate for it. Velthara left Kelvin's quarters and walked through the station's observation deck. She looked out at the stars, at the vast expanse of space that held 847 species, each with their own cultures and histories and dreams. For 200 years, humanity had been part of that tapestry. They had been loud and insistent and sometimes annoying, but they had been there. Always talking, always negotiating, always trying to find the peaceful path forward. Now they were silent, and their silence hung over the galaxy like a storm that had not yet broken. Velthara thought about the 15,000 humans who had died on the bright tomorrow. She thought about how the council had called their deaths justified. She thought about how humanity had asked for justice and been denied. And she thought about what Kelvin had said. When humans stop talking, it means they have decided that words are finished. The countdown ticked in the darkness of space. 46 days, 22 hours, 47 minutes. What had humanity decided to do instead? Kelvin could not stop working. His research quarters had become a maze of holographic displays, all showing different pieces of the puzzle he was desperately trying to solve. Sleep felt impossible when the countdown continued its relentless march toward zero. 43 days remaining. He pulled up another file from the Human Cultural Database. These databases had been made available to any species that wanted to study humanity. Kelvin had access because of his academic credentials. But 3 days ago he noticed something strange. New files were appearing in the database, files that had not been there before. They were not locked or hidden. They were simply omitted, as if humanity wanted people to find them. The latest file was titled Historical Patterns of Human Conflict. Resolution. Kelvin opened it with trembling hands. What he found made his blood run cold. The document was a study, written by human historians, analyzing their own species' behavior across 10,000 years of recorded history. It was clinical, detached, almost brutally honest. Humans, Kelvin realized, were not afraid to examine their own darkness. One section caught his attention. It was labeled Diplomatic Withdrawal and Subsequent Military Action. The study analyzed 47 cases throughout human history where nations had withdrawn all diplomatic contact with an enemy before going to war. In 45 of those cases, the war that followed was not about conquest or territory. It was about complete destruction of the enemy's ability to threaten them again. The humans called it total war. Kelvin read the details and his hands shook. Humans had a concept called proportional response. When they were attacked, they would respond with equal force. But there was a line. Once an enemy crossed that line, usually by targeting civilians or committing what humans called war crimes, proportionality ended. Then came something else, something humans called making an example. The Bright Tomorrow had carried 15,000 civilians, children, families. The Thranics had crossed the line. Kelvin immediately tried to contact Zephyrim, but the council director was in closed meetings. He tried to send his findings to other council members. Most ignored him. A few sent polite messages saying they would review his data when time permitted. Only Velthera responded. Come to Observation Deck 7. Now. When Kelvin arrived, he found Velthera standing in front of the massive transparent viewport. She was not alone. A dozen other delegates were there, all from smaller species, all looking worried. Tell them what you told me, Velthera said. Kelvin shared his findings. He showed them the patterns in human history. He explained what total war meant. He showed them data about human military capacity that did not match the official numbers. But this is just speculation, one delegate protested. We have inspected human military facilities. They do not have the fleet size to challenge the Thranics Empire. Have we? Kelvin pulled up inspection records. Look at these dates. We inspect the same stations, the same shipyards over and over. We never visit the facilities in their deeper territories. They say those are civilian manufacturing centers, and we believe them. Why would humans lie about their military strength? Another delegate asked. Maybe they were not lying, Velthera said quietly. Maybe those facilities really were civilian. But what can manufacture civilian ships can manufacture military ships. All you need to do is change the production schedules. That would take years. They have had 3 months since the council's decision, Kelvin said. But I think they have been planning much longer than that. Look at this, he displayed shipping records. For the past 6 months, even before the Bright Tomorrow incident, humans have been withdrawing civilian populations from all frontier worlds. Slowly. Quietly. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. They called it routine population redistribution. Why would they evacuate their civilians before the attack happened? Because, Kelvin said, feeling sick as he spoke, I think they knew something like this was going to happen eventually. I think they were waiting for an excuse. The room fell silent. That is absurd, someone finally said. You are suggesting humans wanted their civilians to die? No. Kelvin's skin flashed with agitation. I am saying humans know their own history. They know how galaxies work. Might makes right. The strong prey on the weak. They have been watching the Council for 200 years. They have seen how we treat smaller species, how we ignore crimes when the criminal is powerful. They knew eventually they would be tested. And when that test came, Velthera continued, when the Thranics killed 15,000 humans and the Council called it justified, the humans decided they had their answer. The galaxy operates on strength, not justice. So they will speak in the only language the galaxy truly understands. Across the galaxy, other species were having their own realizations. A trade convoy from the Merchant Guild approached a human border world to deliver goods. The colony was called New Vancouver, home to 3 million humans and known for its beautiful gardens and peaceful culture. When the convoy arrived, they found the planet empty, not destroyed. Not invaded, just empty. The city stood intact. Power plants still ran. Automated systems maintained the gardens, but every single human was gone. The convoy captain sent a panicked message back to the guild. Within hours, reports came flooding in. 15 human border colonies all evacuated, 23 human space stations empty, 47 orbital habitats abandoned. 6 million humans had vanished from the frontier in 3 months and nobody had noticed because they had left everything running. Lights still turned on at night. Crops were still being harvested by machines. Ships still docked at stations, but only automated cargo systems greeted them. It was as if humanity had decided that their frontier was no longer safe and had withdrawn everyone to where? The Thranix Empire decided they had been patient enough. Krell convinced the military command that the human silence was a sign of weakness. They were hiding, he said. They were afraid. We should take advantage of their fear, Krell argued before the Thranix High Command. Push into their territory. Show them that their tantrums have consequences. The High Command agreed. They authorized a scouting mission. 12 Thranix warships would enter human space and investigate the abandoned colonies. If humans objected, they would be reminded of Thranix military superiority. The fleet entered the system New Vancouver had once occupied. The planet still hung in space, beautiful and blue. The fleet commander scanned the surface and confirmed the reports. No humans, just empty cities and running machines. Scan for weapons, the commander ordered. They might have left traps. The scans showed nothing. No weapons, no shields, no defenses at all. The planet was completely unprotected. Sir, the sensor officer said, I am picking up something strange in the outer system. Define strange. There are structures, orbital platforms of some kind. But they are not showing up properly on scanners. I am only detecting them because they are blocking starlight. The commander felt a cold chill run down his spine. How many structures? I cannot get an accurate count. The stealth technology is extremely advanced, but based on the star occlusion patterns, at least 300 platforms. Possibly more, 300. In one system, a system humans had supposedly abandoned. Back us out, slowly. No sudden movements. But as the Thranix fleet began to retreat, every screen suddenly lit up with a message. It was text only. No voice, no image. Just words in every galactic language. You are trespassing. Leave now. Do not return. The fleet left. Fast. When they returned to Thranix space, the commander filed a full report. The High Command read it in silence. 300 platforms with stealth technology that should not exist, in a system humans had abandoned. If that was one system, how many platforms did humanity have throughout their territory? Krell read the report and for the first time felt something that might have been doubt. Kelvin's research continued to uncover disturbing patterns. He found that humanity had been quietly purchasing materials from all over the galaxy. Rare metals, industrial components, quantum processors. All legal trade, nothing suspicious, but when he added up the quantities over the past 2 decades, it did not match human civilian production needs. Where had all those materials gone? He found his answer in a human educational database. It was a history textbook for young humans, designed to teach children about their species' past. One chapter was titled, The Lesson We Must Never Forget. Kelvin read it and he understood. The chapter described humanity's worst wars. The ones where millions died, the ones where entire cities burned, the ones where humans used weapons so terrible that they swore never to use them again. The chapter was required reading for every human child. They were forced to study their own capacity for horror, but the chapter did not end with never again. It ended with something else. We learn these lessons not to feel guilty. We learn them, so we understand what we are capable of. We are not monsters, but we can become monsters if we choose to. That choice is our responsibility. The galaxy must never fear us because of what we might do, but if we are ever pushed into a corner, if our families are ever threatened, if justice becomes impossible to find, the galaxy must remember that we know exactly what we are capable of, and we will do what must be done. Kelvin showed this to Velthara. She read it 3 times. "They have been teaching their children this for 200 years, she whispered. "This is not rage. This is not revenge. They have been preparing for this possibility since the day they joined the galactic community. Preparing for the day the galaxy failed them," Kelvin agreed. The countdown continued. 37 days. Reports came in from across the galaxy. Human trading ships had returned to human space. Human diplomats had evacuated all embassies. Human scientific expeditions had abandoned their projects, even long-term studies that had been running for decades. And then someone noticed the shipyards. A freelance journalist from the Galactic News Network had archived footage of human shipyards from 10 years ago. She compared it to recent footage taken by a passing merchant vessel. Something was different. Very different. 10 years ago, the shipyards had been building colony ships, cargo haulers, and research vessels. The facilities were busy but not remarkable. Standard civilian production. In the recent footage, the shipyards were empty. Not inactive, empty, as in every ship that had been under construction was gone. Hundreds of vessels just vanished. Either humanity had the fastest shipbuilding operation in galactic history, or they had been building something other than civilian ships, and had now moved all of them somewhere else. The journalist published her findings. The galaxy paid attention. Suddenly everyone was looking at human territory with new eyes, trying to spot what they had missed. A military analyst from the Palaxian Collective ran the numbers. If humanity had been secretly converting even 20% of their civilian production to military purposes over the past 20 years, and if those ships were designed with war in mind, rather than being retrofitted civilian vessels, the analyst published his estimate. 3,000 warships, maybe more, all designed from the keel up for combat, all crewed by a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare, and every single one of them was now somewhere in human space, location unknown. The council finally agreed to let Kelvin present his findings. It took 36 days of the countdown ticking away before they gave him a time slot. Better late than never. Kelvin stood in the center of the council chamber. 847 species looked down at him. The empty human section loomed large to his left. "I am here to warn you," he began. "We have misunderstood humanity, fundamentally and dangerously." He showed them everything, the historical patterns, the evacuations, the material purchases, the education system that taught every human child about their capacity for violence, the evidence that humanity had been building a military far larger than anyone suspected. "But why?" someone called out. "If they had this power, why hide it? Why not use it for influence?" "Because," Kelvin said, "humans do not want to be feared. They want to be trusted. They spent 200 years trying to build a galaxy where strength did not matter, where justice could be found through words and laws. They hid their weapons because they hoped never to use them. Then why build them at all? Hope is not certainty," Kelvin said quietly. "Humans hope for the best but prepare for the worst. It is part of their nature. They hoped the galaxy would value justice. They prepared for the possibility that it would not." Krell stood up, his massive form radiating anger. "This is speculation and fear-mongering. The humans are hiding because they are weak. They know they cannot challenge Thranix's might." "Then why?" Velthara stood as well, her voice cutting through the chamber. "Is your empire mobilizing every warship you have? Why are you pulling forces from every border and massing them in your core systems? If the humans are so weak, why do your actions suggest you are preparing for the fight of your life?" Krell's eyes blazed, but he said nothing, because it was true. The Thranix Empire was quietly preparing for war. They were just not admitting it publicly. Zephyrim raised his hand for silence. "Kelvin, what do you recommend we do?" "Contact the humans, apologize. Offer to reopen the investigation into the Bright tomorrow. Give them what they asked for in the first place, justice. The council has already ruled, then unrule it." Kelvin's voice cracked with desperation. "Please, the countdown has 30 days left. Whatever humanity has planned, we still have time to stop it, but only if we admit we were wrong." The council debated for 3 hours. In the end, they voted. The decision was close, but the answer was no. To reverse their ruling would set a dangerous precedent. It would make the council look weak. It would anger the Thranix Empire. Better to maintain order. Better to stay strong. Better not to give in to threats. Kelvin walked out of the chamber feeling numb. He had tried. He had presented everything. And the council had chosen pride over survival. That night he received a message on his private communication system. It came from an unknown source, but the encryption signature was human. The message was short. You tried to warn them. Thank you. Get to neutral space before the counter reaches 0. Take anyone you care about. Kelvin stared at the message for a long time. Then he began making calls. Velthara first, then a few other delegates who had actually listened. Then his family on his homeworld. Pack, he told them. Get on a ship. Get to the neutral zones. Do not ask questions. Just go. The countdown continued its patient march. 29 days. 28 days. 27 days. The galaxy watched and waited, still not quite believing that humanity would actually do anything. They were peaceful. They were diplomatic. They would come back to the negotiating table. They always did. But Kelvin knew better, and every day he watched as the number decreased, counting down to the moment when humanity would finally show the galaxy who they really were. The countdown reached 10 days and the galaxy held its breath. The Thranix Empire had mobilized fully. 2,400 warships, the largest military fleet ever assembled in known space, now patrolled Thranix core systems. Battle stations had been activated. Civilian populations in border regions were being evacuated deeper into Thranix territory. For all their public bravado, the Empire was taking the threat seriously. Other species watched and made quiet preparations. Trade routes shifted away from Thranix space. Insurance companies stopped covering shipments into the region. Smart captains found reasons to be somewhere else. Velthara had taken Kelvin's advice. She had requested and received an immediate leave of absence from the council, citing family health issues. She was now on her homeworld, far from Thranix territory, far from Concord Prime. She watched the news feeds obsessively, unable to look away. Kelvin had also left Concord Prime. He had gathered his family and taken them to a neutral space station near the edge of mapped space. He spent his days continuing his research, as if understanding humanity better might somehow change what was coming. 5 days remained. The Galactic News Network ran continuous coverage. Experts debated what would happen. Some still insisted humanity was bluffing. Others pointed to the military buildup, the evacuations, the patterns Kelvin had identified. A few brave commentators suggested that maybe, just maybe, the council should reconsider their ruling on the bright tomorrow. But the council remained silent. To change course now would be political suicide for most representatives. Better to wait and see. Better to maintain dignity. 3 days remained. Zephyrim tried one final time to contact humanity. He used every channel available. He sent messages on every frequency. He even dispatched a fast courier ship to human space with a direct plea from him personally. The ship returned 6 hours later. It had been met at the border by a human patrol vessel. The patrol had accepted the message, scanned it, and replied with a single sentence: "The time for messages has passed." 2 days remained. Krell held a press conference from his flagship, the Dominator, a massive dreadnought that served as the mobile command center for the Thranix fleet. He stood before cameras surrounded by his command staff, projecting absolute confidence. "Let the humans come," he declared. "Let them send their hidden fleet if it even exists. They will find that Thranix military might cannot be challenged. We have fought and won 1,000 battles. We have conquered planets and subdued rebellions. What are humans? A species that talks too much and fights too little. They have forgotten what real war looks like. We will remind them." His speech was broadcast across the galaxy. It was meant to inspire confidence, to show strength. But Velthara, watching from her homeworld, noticed something. Krell's eyes kept darting to the side, looking at something off camera, and his hands, normally so steady, trembled slightly when he thought the cameras were not focused on them. He was afraid. He just could not admit it. 1 day remained. The galaxy barely functioned. Markets crashed as traders panicked. Ships refused to fly near Thranix space. The council tried to hold an emergency session, but so many representatives were unavailable that they could not reach quorum. Kelvin sat in his quarters on the neutral station, watching the countdown. His research was complete, but it no longer mattered. He had figured out what humanity was. He had warned everyone who would listen. Now there was nothing to do but watch. His wife came to sit beside him. She was a gentle soul, a teacher who had never understood his fascination with humanity. But she held his hand as they watched the numbers decrease. "What will they do?" she asked softly. "I do not know exactly," Kelvin admitted. "But I know it will be precise. Humans do not waste effort. They do not kill unnecessarily. But they will make sure no one ever forgets what happens when you kill their civilians and call it justified. Are we safe here? Yes, we are nowhere near Thranix space, and humanity has no quarrel with us. Their target is very specific." The countdown reached 1 hour. Thranix fleet commanders issued final orders. Ships moved into defensive formations. Shields powered up. Weapon systems armed. Every sensor array in Thranix space pointed outward, searching for the human fleet that everyone knew must be coming. But the sensors showed nothing. Empty space, normal background radiation, the occasional commercial vessel scrambling to get out of the region. Nothing that looked like an attacking fleet. 30 minutes Krell stood on the bridge of the Dominator, surrounded by the best officers the Thranix Empire had. His fleet was ready. "Let the humans come. Let them try. Any contacts?" he asked for the 100th time. "Negative, War Master. All approaches clear." "They will not show up," one officer muttered. "This whole thing is a bluff." But Krell noticed that the officer who said this had his hand on a lucky charm, rubbing it nervously. 10 minutes. The countdown was now displayed on every news network, every data stream, every public screen across the galaxy. 847 species watched the same numbers tick down. 5 minutes. Kelvin's wife squeezed his hand tighter. "I am frightened." "So am I," Kelvin admitted. "So is everyone, including the Thranix." 1 minute. On the bridge of the Dominator, every officer watched their sensors. Krell stood rigid, his pride not allowing him to show fear even though his hearts were racing. 30 seconds. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Even the news commentators fell silent. 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. For exactly 10 seconds, nothing happened. The galaxy watched and waited and wondered if the whole thing really had been a bluff. Then every single Thranix military vessel simultaneously lost power. Not just main power. All power. Reactors shut down. Backup systems failed. Emergency reserves did not activate. 2,400 warships, from the massive Dominator to the smallest patrol craft, went completely dark. Ships that had been moving continued on momentum alone. Ships in orbit began to drift. The mighty Thranix fleet, the largest military force in known space, became nothing more than metal debris floating in space. On the Dominator's bridge, emergency lights failed to activate. Officers shouted in confusion. Krell demanded answers, but the communication systems were dead. Everything was dead. Then, exactly 48 seconds after the power failed, it came back. Reactors reactivated. Systems rebooted. Shields flickered back to life. Weapons came back online. But everyone on every ship knew the truth. Something had reached into their vessels and turned them off. Remotely. Simultaneously. Effortlessly. And if whatever it was could turn them off, it could have destroyed them just as easily, before anyone could react, before anyone could speak. Every screen in Thranix space lit up with a message. Every communication system, every display, every data terminal. The message appeared simultaneously on military vessels, civilian stations, planetary networks, and personal devices. It was a list: names, dates, locations, casualties. The list showed every Thranix military action for the past 300 years. Every battle, every conflict, every incident, and beside each one, detailed records of civilian casualties, treaty violations, and war crimes. The list was hundreds of pages long. It was meticulously documented. Every claim was backed by sensor logs, testimony, intercepted communications, and evidence that had been quietly gathered over centuries. Humanity had been watching, recording, documenting everything. The list ended with one entry: the bright tomorrow, date 72 days ago, location Sector 447, civilian casualties 15,000, perpetrators War Master Krell, Commander Thresh, Commander Valcor, Council ruling, justified. Then came a new message, broadcast on all frequencies in every galactic language. To the species of the galaxy. For 200 years we spoke. We negotiated. We asked for justice through proper channels. We believed in the system you created. The Galactic Council had one purpose: to prove that civilization could be built on law, not strength, that the weak could find protection through justice, not force. The council failed. 15,000 of our people died. The council called it justified. We asked for accountability. The council refused. We understand the message this sends. We understand the system as it truly exists. The strong do as they wish. The weak suffer as they must. Words and laws mean nothing without the power to enforce them. Very well, you have chosen the rules. We will play by them. The Thranix Empire claimed our civilians were acceptable casualties. We disagree. We will now collect what we are owed. The following individuals are responsible for ordering, executing, or covering up the massacre of the Bright Tomorrow. War Master Krell, Commander Thresh, Commander Valkor, Admiral Thex, and 17 others listed below. They will be turned over to human custody within 24 hours. The Thranix government that authorized this attack and defended it will dissolve. New elections will be held under neutral oversight. These terms are not negotiable. They are not a request. They are what will happen. If the Thranix Empire complies, no further action will be taken. If they refuse, we will extract the individuals ourselves. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. You have 24 hours. This is not revenge. This is justice. We gave you 200 years to prove justice could be found through words. You failed. Now you will learn that justice, one way or another, will be done. The message ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stared at their screens in shock. On the Dominator's bridge, Krell stood frozen. His name was on the list. He was being hunted by humans, by a species everyone had thought was weak. War Master, an officer said quietly. Our sensors are detecting something. What? Ships, lots of ships. They are appearing, all around Thranix space. Krell looked at the sensor display. His blood turned to ice. Red markers were appearing everywhere. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Ships decloaking from stealth technology that made them invisible until they chose to be seen. The sensors counted automatically. 1,000. 2,000. 2,500. 3,000. 3,000 human warships surrounding all of Thranix space. Every major planet, every military installation, every trade route. They had been there the whole time, invisible, watching, waiting. The human fleet outnumbered Thranix forces. But more than that, these were not civilian ships hastily armed for war. These were purpose-built warships. And the technology they displayed, stealth systems, remote shutdown capabilities, coordination across thousands of vessels, was far beyond what anyone thought humanity possessed. Krell realized with crushing certainty that humanity had not been hiding because they were weak. They had been hiding their strength because they had hoped never to use it. Now that hope was gone, and the galaxy was about to see what humanity had been holding back for 200 years. The Thranix High Command convened an emergency session. The fleet was crippled not by damage but by fear. Their most advanced warships had been turned off like children's toys. The enemy had technology they could not match. And the enemy was not going away. We could fight, one commander suggested weakly. And how would we fight? Another replied. They can turn off our ships remotely. They can appear and disappear at will. They have superior numbers and superior technology. Fighting would be suicide. Then what do you suggest? We surrender? Hand over our War Master like criminals? Krell ordered the attack on civilian vessel. He did commit. Do not finish that sentence. Krell roared. I followed proper military protocol. The vessel was in our space. It was in disputed space, someone said quietly. And it was carrying civilians, children. Silence fell over the room. They want me, Krell said finally. They want us. 22 officers. They listed us by name. What do we do, War Master? Krell looked at the sensor display showing 3,000 human ships in perfect formation. Not attacking, just waiting. Patient. Inevitable. I do not know, he admitted. And for a warrior who had spent his entire life certain of his strength, those words tasted like poison. Across the galaxy, the initial shock began to fade, replaced by frantic activity. The council tried to convene, but half the representatives were missing. Some had fled. Some were in hiding. Some simply refused to be part of whatever was coming next. Felthara watched the news coverage from her homeworld. She felt sick. Kelvin had been right about everything. Humanity was not bluffing. They were not weak. They had been waiting, hoping the galaxy would prove it could function on justice. And when the galaxy failed that test, Humanity had already been prepared for 200 years to provide their own justice. Kelvin sat in his quarters, vindicated but not happy. He had tried to warn them. They had not listened. Now everyone would pay the price for that arrogance. His wife looked at him with frightened eyes. "What happens now?" "Now," Kelvin said softly, "we find out if the Thranics have learned anything. If they give up the ones responsible, humanity might stop there. If they refuse—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. They both knew. If the Thranics refused, humanity would go in and take what they wanted. And nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The countdown that had terrified the galaxy was over. But a new countdown had begun. 24 hours for the Thranics to comply. Everyone watched the clock and wondered, would pride finally give way to survival? Or would the Thranics Empire choose to fight a war they could not possibly win? The seconds ticked away and humanity waited in silence, their 3,000 ships holding position, not threatening, not attacking, just existing as a promise of what would come if justice continued to be denied. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's silence. Now it was learning to fear something even more: humanity's patience. 23 hours had passed since humanity's ultimatum. The Thranics High Command sat in their war room deep beneath the surface of their homeworld. They had been debating, arguing, and fighting for almost an entire day. No decision had been reached. Krell stood at the center of the room, his massive form somehow seeming smaller than before. Around him, the most powerful military leaders in Thranic space argued about his fate. "We cannot simply hand over our War Master," Admiral Thex shouted. He was one of the others named on humanity's list. "It would show weakness. Every enemy we have would smell blood." "What enemies?" another commander replied bitterly. "We cannot even defend against the humans. 3,000 ships appeared from nowhere. They turned off our entire fleet like it was a toy. What other enemies matter compared to that? We have fought for 300 years to build this empire. We do not surrender because one species throws a tantrum." "This is not a tantrum," a quieter voice said. Commander Velrus was younger than most in the room, but he had studied human military history. "This is an execution that has not happened yet. They are giving us a choice in how it proceeds." "Execution? Of whom?" "Of us. Of the Empire. Maybe of our entire species." Velrus pulled up a display showing the human fleet positions. "Look at this. Really look at it. They have ships positioned at every major population center, every military base, every industrial complex. But they are not in attack positions. They are in containment positions. They have surrounded us completely. So? We can break through." "With what?" Velrus demanded. "They demonstrated they can shut down our ships remotely. Even if they could not, they outnumber us and have better technology. But here is what should truly terrify you. They are not trying to terrify us. There are no aggressive displays, no weapon tests, no threatening maneuvers. They are just waiting. Like a surgeon waiting for the patient to be ready for the operation." The room fell silent. "What are you saying?" Krell asked quietly. "I am saying they have already decided what will happen. The only question is whether we make it easy or hard. If we comply, they take the individuals responsible and leave. If we refuse, they will come and take them anyway, and they will destroy anything that gets in their way, not out of anger, not out of cruelty, simply because it is in the way." "You sound like you admire them," Thex spat. "I fear them," Velrus corrected. "There is a difference. Admiration is for equals, fear is for predators." Another hour passed. The debate continued in circles. Pride versus survival, honor versus pragmatism, empire versus existence. Finally, Krell himself spoke. "Enough." His voice cut through the arguing like a blade. "This is my decision to make. They want me. They want those of us who gave the orders. War Master, they are right." The words seemed to cause Krell physical pain. "I gave the order to fire on the bright tomorrow. I believed it was justified. I was wrong. You were following. I was wrong." Krell's roar shook the room. "They were civilians. Children. And I killed them because they were in space I claimed was mine." The humans asked for justice and we spat in their faces. Now they have come to collect, and you are all sitting here pretending we have a choice. He looked around at the others named on the list. We can continue this farce. We can refuse. We can order the fleet to fight, and every single Thranix warrior will die bravely and pointlessly. Or we can face what we have done and accept the consequences. You would surrender? You, War Master? Krell would give yourself to the enemy? I would save our people from a war we cannot win. I would accept responsibility for my actions, and I would show the galaxy that Thranix warriors, at least, know honor when it is time to face it. Krell straightened to his full height. Send a message to the humans. We will comply. But I have one request. What request? Ask them what they plan to do with us. Are we to be executed? Imprisoned? I want to know what we are walking into. The message was sent. For 10 minutes, there was no response. Then a reply came back. It was text only, like all human communications had been. Brief and direct. You will stand trial. You will face the families of those you killed. You will be judged by your own laws and by ours. If found guilty, you will be imprisoned according to standards set by the Galactic Convention on Prisoners of War, standards which, we note, the Thranix Empire signed but does not follow. Your imprisonment will be humane. You will not be tortured, you will not be executed. You will simply spend the remainder of your lives knowing what you did and accepting that actions have consequences. This is justice, not revenge. Krell read the message 3 times. He had expected death. He had expected torture. He had expected humans to do to him what he would have done to them. Instead, they promised a trial and imprisonment under rules his own empire had agreed to, but ignored. He realized he had never understood humans at all. I will go, he said. The others named on the list will make their own choices, but I will go. One by one, the others agreed. What choice did they have? Pride or survival? In the end, survival won. The Thranix government sent their acceptance. They would comply with all of humanity's demands. The individuals responsible would be turned over. The government would dissolve. Elections would be held. Humanity's response was immediate. Acknowledged. A transfer shuttle will arrive at your capital in 2 hours. The individuals listed should be ready for transport. Bring no weapons, no guards, no tricks. Just the ones we asked for. If everyone cooperates, this will end peacefully. 2 hours later, a single human shuttle descended through Thranix atmosphere. It was small, unarmed, and carried only a pilot and 2 security officers. The shuttle landed in the capital city's main plaza, where millions of Thranix citizens had gathered to watch. Krell walked toward the shuttle. Behind him came the other 21 individuals on humanity's list. They wore no armor. They carried no weapons. They walked with heads held high, trying to maintain dignity and surrender. The human security officers stood at the shuttle's ramp. They were not large by Thranix standards. They were not impressive or frightening. They simply stood there, calm and professional, watching the war criminals approach. When Krell reached the ramp, he stopped. He looked at the human officer. I am War Master Krell. I am responsible for the deaths of 15,000 of your people. I am here to face justice. The human officer nodded once. We know who you are. Please board the shuttle. You will not be harmed during transport. That is all? No speech? No declaration? What would be the point? The officer asked. You know what you did. We know what you did. The galaxy knows what you did. Words will not change facts. Krell boarded the shuttle. The others followed. Within minutes, the shuttle lifted off and climbed back toward space where a human ship waited. The galaxy watched this happen. The mighty War Master Krell, commander of Thranix forces, surrendering without a fight, being taken into custody by 2 human security officers as if he were a common criminal. Because that is what he was. And everyone knew it. But the Thranix High Command was not done making mistakes. Admiral Thex had not boarded the shuttle. He had hidden instead, refusing to surrender, and he had convinced a small faction of loyalists to help him, "This is cowardice," he broadcast to the Thranix fleet. "We are warriors. We do not bow to threats. I am taking command of the Third Fleet. We will show humanity what it means to challenge the Thranix Empire." The Third Fleet consisted of 200 warships. It was a significant force. Under Thex's command, they broke formation and began moving toward the nearest human vessels. On the human command ship, Absolute Zero, Captain Sarah Chen, no relation to the former ambassador, watched the Thranix ships approach. She was calm. Her crew was calm. They had trained for this. "Thranix vessels are powering weapons," her tactical officer reported. "Warn them," Chen ordered. A message was broadcast. "Thranix Third Fleet, you are in violation of the agreed terms. Power down immediately and return to position. This is your only warning." They are not responding, they are accelerating. Time to weapons range. 4 minutes. Chen sighed. "All ships, implement Protocol 7, non-lethal suppression. I want those vessels disabled, not destroyed. Minimal casualties, yes, Captain." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The human fleet moved with a precision that seemed impossible. 3,000 ships acting as one organism, they did not rush to meet the Thranix attack. They simply repositioned, slight adjustments, small movements. But within 90 seconds, the Thranix Third Fleet found itself surrounded. The Thranix ships opened fire. Particle beams and missiles launched toward human vessels. The humans' shields flickered as they absorbed the impacts, but no human ship was destroyed. No human ship even took significant damage. Then the humans returned fire. But they did not use their main weapons. Instead, they deployed something else. Specialized electromagnetic pulses, perfectly calibrated to overload Thranix shield generators without destroying the ships themselves. One by one, Thranix ships found their shields failing. Then their weapons went offline. Then their engines shut down. Within 6 minutes of the first shot being fired, all 200 Thranix vessels were drifting helplessly. The humans had disabled an entire fleet without killing a single crew member. Captain Chen opened a channel to Admiral Thex's flagship. "Admiral, your fleet is disabled. You have 2 choices. Surrender now or we will begin boarding your vessels and taking you by force. Choose quickly." On the Thranix flagship, Thex stared at his screens in disbelief. His entire fleet gone in 6 minutes. Without the humans even breaking formation or appearing to try very hard, he realized Velrus had been right. Humanity had already decided what would happen. The Thranix had just been allowed to choose how difficult they wanted to make it. "I surrender," Thex said quietly. "Say again, Admiral." "I surrender," Thex shouted. "You have won. Come and take me." Human boarding parties were dispatched. Small teams that moved through Thranix ships with practiced efficiency. They secured weapons. They escorted Admiral Thex and his conspirators to shuttles. They left the crews alive and unharmed, just stripped of their ability to cause more trouble. Within 2 hours it was over. The Third Fleet sat disabled but intact. Thex and his loyalists were in custody. Not a single life had been lost on either side. The galaxy watched in awe and horror. Humanity had just defeated 200 warships without killing anyone. That level of control, that level of precision, it was unprecedented. More importantly, it sent a message. Humanity could have destroyed the Third Fleet. They could have killed everyone aboard in retaliation for the attack, but they chose not to. They chose restraint. They chose to prove they could defeat the enemy without becoming like the enemy. Kelvin watched the footage from his neutral station. Tears ran down his face. "Do you see?" he said to his wife. "Do you see what they are? They are killers who choose not to kill. Warriors who choose mercy even in battle. This is what the galaxy should have understood. Humanity is not dangerous because they can fight. They are dangerous because they can fight and still choose not to when given the option." On Concord Prime, Zephyrium sat in his private quarters watching the same footage. He had been director of the Galactic Council for 50 years. He had prided himself on maintaining order and justice, but he had failed. When it truly mattered, when 15,000 civilians died and humanity asked for justice, he had chosen politics over principle. Now humanity was showing the galaxy what real justice looked like. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the calm, patient application of consequences for actions. He typed out a message. It was his resignation from the council. He could not, in good conscience, continue leading an institution that had failed so completely. The Thranix homeworld prepared for occupation. Civilians evacuated major cities. Resistance fighters prepared to defend their homes. Everyone expected humanity to invade, to conquer, to crush the empire that had defied them. Instead, Captain Chen broadcast another message. To the people of the Thranix Empire, your government has surrendered those responsible for the massacre of the bright tomorrow. Your military has been neutralized. You are now at our mercy. Here is what we will do with that power. Nothing. We are not here to conquer you. We are not here to enslave you. We are here only to ensure justice is done and prevent future atrocities. Your government must be dissolved as agreed. New elections will be held under neutral oversight. We will monitor to ensure fairness, but we will not interfere. The Thranix people will choose their own future. We will maintain a presence in your space for 1 standard year, not as conquerors, as peacekeepers. Any attempt at military buildup will be stopped. Any threat to civilian populations will be met with immediate intervention. But if you choose peace, if you choose to rebuild your society on better foundations, we will not stand in your way. In 1 year we will withdraw. What you do after that is your choice. But know this, we will be watching. Always. And if you ever again attack civilians, if you ever again commit the crimes your old government committed, we will return. And next time, we will not be so gentle. This is not occupation. This is transition. Use this time wisely. The Thranix people, expecting conquest, instead got a chance at redemption. It was more than most of them thought they deserved. Across the galaxy, species that had been enemies of the Thranix for centuries prepared to take advantage of their weakness. Predators smelling blood. Old grudges waiting to be settled. But every time a fleet moved toward Thranix space, they found human ships waiting. The message was always the same. Turn back. The Thranix are under protection while they rebuild. Come back in 1 year if you still want war. Most turned back. A few tried to push through. Those few learned that humanity's patience with the Thranix did not extend to other species looking to prey on the vulnerable. Humanity had not just defeated the Thranix Empire. They had taken responsibility for what came after. They were not just executioners of justice. They were guardians of the peace that followed. And the galaxy began to understand. This was not a species that fought for glory or conquest. This was a species that fought to prove a principle, the principle that actions have consequences, that the strong do not get to do as they wish, that justice, one way or another, will be done. Krell sat in a human prison cell. It was clean. He was given food and medical care. He was not tortured or abused. He was simply held accountable. Every day he was required to watch video testimony from survivors of the bright tomorrow. Families who lost children, children who lost parents, people whose entire lives had been destroyed by his order. It was the most effective punishment humanity could have devised. Not pain, just truth. The weight of what he had done, shown to him over and over until he could never escape it. On the 50th day of his imprisonment, Krell asked to speak. A human guard brought him to an interview room. A human official sat across from him. "I want to speak," Krell said. "To the families. To apologize. I know it will not change anything, but I need them to know that I understand. I was wrong. I thought strength was enough. I thought their lives mattered less than my orders. I was wrong." The official studied him for a long moment. "We will arrange it. But understand, many of them will not forgive you. Many will hate you until you die. Apology does not erase what you did." "I know," Krell said, "but I need to try. Even if it changes nothing, I need to try." The human official nodded. "That is more than most war criminals manage. We will arrange it." Humanity had not just defeated their enemy. They were trying to redeem him. Not because he deserved it, but because they believed even monsters could learn to be better. It was the most human thing they could have done. 6 months had passed since humanity had stopped talking and the galaxy had learned to listen. Velthera returned to Concord Prime, but everything had changed. The Great Council Chamber still stood in orbit around the neutral world, but it felt different now. Smaller somehow, less important. She took her seat in the Corvani section and looked around. The chamber was fuller than it had been in months. After the crisis, many representatives had fled. Now they were returning, but they came back different, quieter, more careful with their words. The human section was no longer empty. 3 human representatives sat there, but they did not speak unless spoken to. They did not propose treaties or mediate disputes. They simply sat and watched with patient, calculating eyes. Ambassador Kofi had replaced Ambassador Chen. He was younger, darker-skinned, with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. He rarely spoke in sessions. When he did, every species in the chamber stopped what they were doing to listen, because everyone had learned. When humanity speaks now, it matters. Zephyrim had resigned, as had 17 other council members who felt they had failed in their duty. The new council director was Pelmora of the Triaxian Collective, a species known for careful deliberation. Her first act had been to formally apologize to humanity for the council's failure regarding the bright tomorrow. Humanity had accepted the apology, but they had not forgotten. Velthara watched the new director call the session to order. The first issue on the agenda was a border dispute between 2 minor powers. They had been arguing for 6 months about a system that both claimed. In the old days, this would have taken weeks of debate. The stronger power would have eventually bullied the weaker one into submission. The council would have accepted whatever resolution maintained stability, not justice. Today was different. The 2 species presented their cases. Both were passionate. Both felt wronged. The arguments went in circles for an hour. Then Ambassador Kofi stood. The chamber fell silent instantly. "With respect," Kofi said quietly, "both of your claims are based on selective interpretation of settlement law. The Galactic Convention on Territory, Section 7, Paragraph 4 is very clear. First settlement establishes primary claim, only if the settlement is maintained continuously for 10 standard years. Neither of you meet this requirement." He pulled up a holographic display showing the actual text of the law and historical records of both species settlements. The Vren abandoned their colony after 8 years due to resource depletion. The Korthax established their mining operation 11 years ago, but it has been automated for the last 4 years with no permanent population. By the letter of the law you both agreed to follow, neither of you has a valid claim. The system should remain neutral territory. The 2 species began to argue, but Kofi cut them off with a gesture. You can accept the ruling or continue fighting. But know this: if your dispute turns violent, if civilians die because you cannot agree to follow your own laws, humanity will intervene. We will enforce the convention you both signed. We will protect any civilians caught in the crossfire, and we will hold accountable any leaders who choose war over peace. He sat down. He had spoken for less than 2 minutes. But the issue was resolved. Both species quietly agreed to accept the neutral territory ruling. Velthara felt a chill. This was the new reality. Humanity did not debate or persuade or negotiate anymore. They simply stated facts and consequences. And because everyone knew they could and would enforce those consequences, arguing was pointless. After the session, Velthara found Kelvin in his rebuilt research quarters on the station. He had returned from his exile to become the Council's official advisor on human affairs. It was a new position, created because the Council finally realized they needed someone who understood humanity. "Did you watch the session?" she asked. "I did." Kelvin's skin was a thoughtful purple. "Humanity has changed everything without seeming to try. They barely speak. They make simple statements of fact. Yet everyone listens as if they were shouting, because everyone knows what happens when humanity stops speaking entirely." Kelvin pulled up a star chart. "Look at this. Do you see the pattern?" The chart showed human ship positions across the galaxy. They were everywhere. Not concentrated in human space, but spread out across all the major trade routes, border regions, and disputed territories. "They are not invading," Kelvin explained. "They are not conquering. They are simply present. A human patrol here, a human monitoring station there. They are not asking permission. They are simply doing it. And no one is stopping them, would you?" Kelvin asked. "Would you tell the species that defeated the Thranix Empire in 6 minutes that they cannot patrol near your space?" Velthara had no answer. The truth was that humanity's presence was making the galaxy safer. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for generations were now clear. Border skirmishes that had flared up monthly now happened rarely. Species that had been preparing for war were now seeking negotiation. Not because they wanted to. Because they were afraid of what would happen if a human patrol ship witnessed them starting a conflict. In Thranix space, The transformation was remarkable. New elections had been held under neutral oversight. The new government was smaller, less militaristic, and focused on rebuilding. The human peacekeeping force maintained a presence but stayed out of daily governance. Commander Velris, who had predicted humanity's nature so accurately, had been elected to the new Thranix Council. His first act was to establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate and document all of the old Empire's crimes. "We must face what we were," he told his people in his inaugural address. "We must understand what we did. Only then can we become something better. The humans gave us a chance to change. We must not waste it." The human peacekeepers watched and documented but did not interfere. They were there to prevent violence, not to dictate politics, but everyone knew they were watching. Always watching. On the human prison vessel Hope of Better Days, Krell continued his sentence. He had spoken to families of the Bright Tomorrow victims. Most had refused to see him. A few had come to scream at him. 2 had listened to his apology. None had forgiven him. But a few had said they appreciated that he was trying. It was more than he deserved, and he knew it. His human guards were professional but not cruel. They treated him according to the rules, nothing more, nothing less. He had everything he needed to survive, but nothing to make him comfortable. He was allowed to watch news from the galaxy. He saw the Thranix Empire rebuilding. He saw the new government making different choices. He saw humanity patrolling the galaxy, not as conquerors but as guardians. One day a human guard asked him a question. "Do you understand now why we did this?" Krell thought carefully before answering. "You wanted justice, not just justice. We wanted to prove that justice is possible. For 200 years we tried to build a galaxy where laws mattered more than strength. The Council failed that test. So we had to prove it ourselves. By defeating us. By defeating you without becoming you. We could have killed everyone on every Thranix ship. We could have bombarded your homeworld. We could have done to you what you did to our civilians. But we did not. Because that would have proved nothing except that we can be as cruel as anyone else." The guard paused at the door. "We are trying to show the galaxy that you can be strong and still choose mercy. That you can win and still follow your own principles. That justice does not require cruelty. If we had just killed you all, we would have been no different than the Empire we destroyed." Krell sat with that thought for a long time after the guard left. In the council chamber, months continued to pass. Humanity remained silent most of the time. They voted on important issues but rarely participated in debates. They were present, watching, recording, but not controlling, yet their presence changed everything. Species that had ignored council law for centuries now followed it carefully. Disputes that would have led to war were now settled through negotiation. Smaller species that had lived in fear now felt protected. The galaxy had not become perfect, but it had become better. Velthera finally asked Ambassador Kofi the question that had been bothering her for months. They were in a private meeting room discussing a minor treaty issue. "Why do you barely speak anymore?" she asked. "You used to be the most vocal species in the council. Now you only speak when necessary." Kofi looked at her with tired eyes. "Because for 200 years we talked and no one truly listened. We proposed hundreds of treaties. We mediated thousands of disputes. We tried to build a better galaxy through words, and when 15,000 of our people died, the galaxy told us our words meant nothing." He stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "We learned that the galaxy does not respect words. It respects action. So we stopped talking and started acting. Now when we do speak, everyone listens. Not because our words have changed, but because everyone knows we will back those words with action if necessary." "But you are still trying to build a better galaxy?" "Yes. But we are doing it differently now. We are not asking permission. We are not debating philosophy. We are simply enforcing the rules that everyone claims to believe in, but no one actually follows. We are proving that civilization can function on law instead of strength, but we are doing it by being stronger than anyone else and choosing to restrain that strength. What if someone challenges you? What if another species builds up their military and decides to test humanity?" Kofi's smile was cold. "Then they will learn what the Thranix learned. We do not want war. We will avoid war if possible. But if someone forces us to fight, they will face an enemy that has been perfecting warfare for 10,000 years and has spent 200 years hoping never to use those skills." He turned to face her. We are not peacekeepers because we are weak. We are peacekeepers because we are strong enough to enforce peace. There is a difference, Velthara understood. Humanity had become exactly what the galaxy needed but did not want. An enforcer. A guardian. A species powerful enough to maintain order but principled enough not to abuse that power. At least not yet. The question was whether humanity could maintain that balance. Whether they could continue to be strong without becoming the tyrants they had overthrown. In a small classroom on Earth, a teacher stood before 30 young students. Today's lesson was about the bright tomorrow and the events that followed. Class, the teacher said, you have now learned about what happened when our diplomacy failed. When 15,000 of our people died and the galaxy told us their lives did not matter. You have learned how humanity responded. What did we do? We stopped talking, one student said. We showed them our strength, another added. We made them face justice, a third contributed. All correct, the teacher nodded. But here is the most important question. Could we have done it differently? The students thought about this. Finally, one raised her hand. We could have destroyed them completely. We could have killed everyone. We could have, the teacher agreed. We had the strength. We had the justification. Many in the galaxy would have understood. So why did we not? Another student answered. Because we are trying to be better than that. Exactly. We are trying to prove that you can be powerful without being cruel, that you can win without becoming the monster. This is the hardest path. This is the path that requires us to be stronger than we have ever been. Not physically strong, morally strong. The teacher pulled up images of the galaxy as it was now. Peaceful trade routes, resolved disputes, species working together instead of fighting. This is what we fought for. Not revenge, not conquest. This, a galaxy where laws matter, where civilians are protected, where the weak can find justice. We spent 200 years asking for this galaxy. When asking failed, we built it ourselves. One student asked quietly, but what if we fail? What if we become like the old empires? What if our power corrupts us? Then, the teacher said seriously, we will deserve what comes after. Power without principle is tyranny. We must never forget that. We must always remember the 15,000 who died because power was more important than justice. We enforce peace now, but we must always question ourselves. Are we enforcing peace? Or are we simply using peace as an excuse for control? The lesson ended. The students left, but they would remember. As every human child for 200 years had been taught about humanity's capacity for violence, now they would also learn about humanity's responsibility to use that violence only for justice. Years passed. The human peacekeeping force remained. Species grew accustomed to seeing human ships in their space. Some resented it. Most accepted it. A few were grateful for it. The Thranix Empire had rebuilt into something new. A federation of worlds, democratic and peaceful. They would never have the military might they once did, but they had something better. A future. Krell died in human custody after serving 15 years of his sentence. He was 73 years old. In his final message recorded for posterity, he said, I was wrong. About strength. About power. About what matters. I hope my people have learned from my mistakes. I hope the galaxy has learned. Strength without justice is not strength. It is just violence waiting to happen. His death was marked respectfully. He was buried according to Thranix custom. His victims did not forgive him, but they acknowledged that he had tried to understand his crimes. It was more than many war criminals managed. On Concord Prime, now 50 years after humanity had stopped talking, a young species made first contact with the galactic community. They were called the Mirani, a timid people who had only just developed faster than light travel. The council welcomed them with proper ceremony. Many species offered trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. It was all very formal and friendly. The Mirani representative, a small creature covered in silver fur, stood before the council. We are honored to be welcomed, she said softly. But we are also afraid. We are small. We are weak. We have heard stories about how this galaxy treats those who cannot defend themselves. The chamber fell silent. Then Ambassador Kofi stood. He was old now, gray-haired and tired near the end of his service. He looked at the frightened young species and spoke with a gentleness that surprised many. You are right to be cautious, he said. This galaxy has not always been kind to the small or the weak. But things have changed. Not because everyone suddenly became good, but because those who prey on the weak now face consequences. He walked to the center of the chamber where the Mirani representative stood. You have humanity's word. No one will exploit you. No one will attack you. No one will force you into anything. You are free to make your own choices, your own mistakes, your own path. And if anyone tries to take that freedom from you, we will stop them. Why? The Mirani asked. Why would you protect us? What do we have that you want? Kofi smiled sadly. Nothing. We want nothing from you except your success. We protect you because 50 years ago, 15,000 of our people died, and the galaxy told us their lives did not matter. We decided then that every life matters. Every species matters. Not because of what they can give us, but because it is right. He returned to his seat. Welcome to the galactic community. It is not perfect, but it is better than it was, and we will work to keep making it better. The Mirani representative had tears in her large eyes. Thank you, she whispered. After the session, Velthara approached Kofi. They were both old now, both near the end of their service. Will humanity ever talk like they used to? She asked. Will you ever return to being the vocal active species you once were? Kofi considered the question. Maybe. Someday. When the galaxy proves it can maintain justice without us enforcing it. When laws are followed because they are right, not because we are watching. When small species do not need to ask for protection because they are not threatened in the first place. That could take centuries. Then we will be silent for centuries. He looked out at the stars. We tried talking for 200 years. Now we are trying something else. We will see which works better. Are you not tired? Does humanity not want to rest? Every day, Kofi admitted. But we made a choice 50 years ago. We decided that if the galaxy would not provide justice, we would. We cannot stop just because it is hard. The moment we stop watching, the moment we stop enforcing consequences, everything will go back to how it was. The strong preying on the weak, might making right. So humanity will be the galaxy's guardian forever, until someone better comes along. Until the systems we are building become self-sustaining. Until species follow the law because they believe in it, not because they fear us. He smiled tiredly. We do not want to be guardians. We were forced into this role. But now that we are here, we will not abandon it. Too many people depend on us. Velthara thought about the galaxy as it had been 50 years ago. The chaos, the injustice, the strong doing as they wished while the weak suffered. She thought about the galaxy now. Not perfect, but better. Laws followed. Peace maintained. Small species protected. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not giving up on us. The galaxy failed you. We deserved your rage. Instead, you gave us justice. You gave us a chance to be better. Kofi nodded. We gave you what we wanted for ourselves. The chance to prove that civilization can be built on principles, not just power. You have that chance now. Do not waste it. In human space, the beacons that had once counted down to war now counted up. Days since humanity had last needed to enforce justice through force. The number was high now. Years of peace. But the beacons still broadcast, still counted, still reminded everyone. The peace existed because humanity was willing to enforce it. The moment someone forgot that lesson, the moment someone decided to test whether humanity was still watching, the counter would reset, and humanity would show them once again that silence does not mean absence. It means patience. It means watching. It means waiting. And it means that when they finally speak again, when circumstances force them to act, the galaxy will remember why they learned to fear humanity's silence in the first place. Because humanity's silence is not surrender. It is the calm before the storm. It is the predator watching its territory. It is the guardian standing watch. And as long as humanity stays silent, as long as they need only to watch without acting, the galaxy remains at peace. The moment they speak again, the moment they are forced to demonstrate rather than just promise, everyone will remember. Humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. They spent 200 years hoping never to use it. They spent 50 years proving they could enforce peace without destroying everything. The galaxy learned to read meaning in humanity's silence. When they are quiet, it means they are watching. When they speak, it means they are giving one last warning. And when they act, well, the Thranix Empire learned what happens when humanity acts. The whole galaxy learned, and no one wants to learn that lesson again. So the galaxy stays peaceful, species follow the law, the strong restrain themselves. The weak are protected, not because everyone suddenly became good, but because everyone knows that humanity is watching, always watching. And humanity keeps its word, always.